Welcome back to the Breakdown, the summer special. It's great to have you joining us. Not the news that we were expecting to deliver for the first show of the year. Scott Robertson has stepped down as head coach of the All Blacks, effective immediately after an end-of-season review in 2025. Joining us to talk about it, the usual suspects, Jeff Wilson, Mills Muliaina, and breaking Justin Marshall out of his Speedos. Good to have you guys with us. But Marshy, how shocking is this news? You've played with Razor. He's a great friend of yours. This is unprecedented for a head coach to basically be sacked like this.
To be honest, Kirsty, it floored me. Look, it is shocking news. Look, I knew that there was a review process that the All Blacks go through at the end of every season, and it hasn't been a smooth ride for Scott Robertson over 2 years. However, you do know that there'll be some fallout from that. But that fallout then gives the opportunity for the head coach to rectify it, to take on board the comments, the criticism, the positivity, and then work towards rectifying it. To make an unprecedented call to terminate his contract out of what they're saying is mutual understanding is something that I just was not expecting when there was a clear objective to keep him through to 2026. So whatever happened in that review, in terms of everything that was fed back to in regard to Scott Robertson, how he's coaching this team and his coaching staff, has culminated in this happening. And yeah, it really knocked me for six, to be perfectly honest. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, Jeff, did you think anyone saw this coming? This is halfway through a 4-year tenure for the All Blacks head coach. We're not talking about assistants here.
Yeah, for a country that's been, I suppose, talking about leadership in sport and whether or not this is possible, I think when you look at all of the dots that have been connected over the last 4 or 5 months, and clearly there was some issues inside the camp, and then they've gone through and done a review. And to me, this comes through trust of the people who have done the review. And when you start talking about the likes of a David Kirk and a Kevin Mialamu and Don Trick has been overseeing, and all of a sudden some different questions have been asked. So once you connect those dots, it was probably a situation where they had to make a big call, or they'd have to make some sort of change. And they've gone down the path of making the big call. Now, is it a massive decision? Yes, it is, because now time is short, heading into a Rugby World Cup, into a tour of South Africa, all of those things we know. But right now, it's about what steps are going to go forward. And like I say, this is a huge call from the board of New Zealand Rugby. And I know we'll look into a lot of deeper things in behind this. But for me, I started to see this was a possibility. Over the last month or so, this didn't go away. This didn't disappear. The issues, they kept getting talked about, and now New Zealand Rugby are looking for a new head coach of the All Blacks, and that's significant with so much at stake.
What are these things that you were seeing, Jeff, or maybe some of these things that you were hearing?
Well, when you start hearing about players' unrest, and you've got obviously one of New Zealand's best and most influential players in Ardie Savea, clearly not happy with what is happening inside the camp. And no, you can't ignore the fact that they didn't appear to be a team that was well connected on the field. And also there was pressure off the field. And for me, they didn't look like a happy camp. And like you say, whispers do go a long way. And for me, I think that was part of the issue. And, the fact that this boat has been leaky for a while. And you'd have to say over the last 2 years, it's like it never settled. It never hit calm waters. It was always rocking a little bit along the way. And something in this review, and like I say, you've got to trust the people who have done this review and the process. And I do, when I start talking about experienced All Blacks and great All Blacks doing it, you have to trust that they have looked at it and said, we need to make a change.
Millsy, surely you've got to feel for Razor here. The All Blacks head coach, not an easy job to come into. He came in when an All Blacks head coach was already in the role, and he was given the job 6 months before Ian Foster had actually left that position. Everything that's been said in the media over the last couple of years, it has not been easy for him.
No, in some ways it hasn't, but in other ways it has. He clearly knew that he was going to be the All Black coach well and truly before the other All Black coach was going to leave. This is, for me, a massive surprise. I mean, you go into a review, you consolidate, you get past the review, even me. I mean, perhaps you guys, I was mowing the lawns and it's breaking news. Scott Robertson's about to get sacked, and you think, another bit of clickbait. No, it's not, is it? And in some sense, when you look at it, when you do a review, you come out of it, you consolidate, you get past the fact it wasn't a successful year last year, but then you push through some of those issues. Now, he's had that over the last few years. Now, if I look at the guys that made the decision, this is a ballsy decision. And I mean it in the utmost respect from the board, because it's one thing having a review, but if it's something that's not quite right, and we haven't got much time, you either go with what's kind of happened and said and then sort of brush it aside and go, hey, we can try and fix this. They've gone, nah, we haven't got time. We've got to move on. So the big thing is right now is, what are they moving on to? Who are the coaches they've got in mind? Because this isn't just news to them. You're talking about the respectful guys that you just mentioned, Jeff. This is coming from a chair. We haven't got a CEO. So the board have absolutely gone out of their way, and we're making decisions now. That gives me a little bit of comfort to think, okay, well, they're stepping forward. But on the other side of that too is what's coming ahead, and what cost is that going to involve with paying out a coach that has still got another year or two on board. What unrest will that come with the players that are involved? They've got a camp coming up this Sunday. Who's going to be there? Jeff and I might as well go and turn up and do a motivational talk. I mean, I wouldn't be much use to them at this stage, but that's all the sort of the questions we want to be asking ourselves. But I come back to that point that I made earlier. The board to go out of their way and say, hey, we've got to move now, and it's a brave call. But one that obviously will come with a lot of planning behind it, and they've got to move fast. Super Rugby is around the corner, so we need an All Black coach. What does that look like? I guess that's what we're going to discuss today.
Well, I think quite clearly, Mills, mowing the lawns this morning, it avoided that summer do that you're looking to expand on there. So it didn't do all of the job. But the other side of it is, which I think about as well, and I'd be really interested to hear what you all think, is, do you feel that equally the New Zealand Rugby Union possibly could have been backed into a bit of a corner because of the players and the senior All Blacks not being happy in that changing shed? Because I know it. I've been through it as an All Black. You guys have been through it. When you do that review, like, you're sticking your neck out on the line because you are having to talk about your current coach. And if you're critical of that coach and yet he gets reappointed, you're kind of slightly fearful, I know I was, that information would somehow leak back and have an effect, and it might be taken personally. So if there was substantial, which it sounds like, feedback from the players that wasn't positive, do you think there was really, once that happened, no other choice for the New Zealand Rugby Union?
I certainly don't think there was another choice for me with New Zealand Rugby. If that's the case, when you lose the trust of the players and you lose the dressing room, and I'm not even 100% sure whether Razor at any point over this 2 years has 100% had control of that dressing room. I'm not sure. And I think Razor in some ways, though, was backed into a corner himself the moment he took the job, because they painted this as a revolution. They were rebranding the All Blacks on and off the field. All of a sudden, there was this pressure to deliver not just results on it, but deliver results off it, opening up the doors, opening up their own platforms. Those are things New Zealand Rugby, the previous regime, the previous board and the CEO and all of the management had decided a path to go down. They had a head of commercial running, which they still haven't replaced. So they'd gone down that path and they'd portrayed Razor as almost a saviour.
Yeah.
How hard was it for him then to live up to those expectations? Virtually impossible. So all of those pressures, to me, it was always going to be a challenge and difficult. And we've all seen it, and we've seen how he's changed over the last 2 years, how he was when he came in, when he spoke to us the first time at Sky. You could just see that the weight of coaching the All Blacks is very, very difficult. It is challenging. And I think over time he has probably got further and further away from having all of the players on board. And it's really challenging. And this is the world we live in now. This is the fact that the players are powerful. They are. But I'd say, Mills and Justin, you guys have been there, though. The players are the ones who are out there playing. We are the ones that have to go and deliver. As a coaching staff, you have to listen to the players. They have to be part of your planning and what you're doing going forward. And I think early on, I don't know if they established that relationship with the senior guys, the guys who had been within 2 points of winning a Rugby World Cup in France. And I think from the start, it just didn't get the momentum it needed that they were hoping for. and it's put everyone under pressure.
It got the hype, didn't it? Right from the get-go. The first year, there was excitement around it. There was you felt as a former player too that there was excitement within the camp. Didn't quite get the results that perhaps they sort of wanted. So you forgive a coach a little bit in some sense. The public do. Yeah. Okay, it'll come the following year. That never came. If anything, he almost possibly revolted back to, hey, I've got to go because the players are actually starting to talk here. And the things that we're starting to hear at the end of the season, the Dalton Papali'i, what we're sort of hearing around that's a lot of unease, without really knowing what happened in the review and what the players have said. Those are some of the things, the handling of those situations and sort of the dealing with the players. And we've known Razor's been very good at that with the Crusaders. He didn't quite get that right with the All Blacks. And perhaps that's some of the things that you're talking about, Marshy. The board may have been backed into a corner because of those conversations. Now, we know how uneasy it is when you've got a guy in your camp that you're going out and you're playing and you want to make sure you've got his back. And then you hear certain things about sort of how he was, handled. And then other guys jump on board. You've all of a sudden got a little bit of a rift in the camp. And that is what it didn't sort of seem right. I think we've got the players. I just didn't see the clarity on the field. And perhaps it was the division between the players. You had a group of guys that sort of backed the sort of the things that they wanted to do, and other guys that just didn't quite sit right with some of the things. Don't get me wrong, they love the All Black jersey, but in some degree there wasn't quite that clarity, specifically when they got into the heated moments, the pressure point moments when you had to be on song. So I guess we'll never know what those comments were and who the players that were involved, but the handling on that to kind of lose the change room in the way that Razor did, considering what he had done with the Crusaders. Mate, he had that team for seven championships. You don't lose a change room just like that. And so to do it on an international stage, the best team in the country, that's massive.
Okay, well, let's move forward then and talk about potential suitors, Mills, because New Zealand Rugby and the All Blacks have to move forward quite quickly. Don't forget that France and Ireland are coming here in July. We have a massive, massive tour of South Africa for the first time in 30 years, all live and exclusive on Sky Sport, don't forget. But there's one name being mentioned to take over as head coach, right? And that is Jamie Joseph, who's currently head coach of the Highlanders. He came back from Japan. He always knew he wanted this role. He's applied for it a couple of times, Jeff. So it's his role, isn't it?
They're going to talk about process. They're going to go through and talk about the fact they want to do things the right way, but it would be hard to believe, and I'm interested if anyone's got any other views, that he's not the guy that they've targeted to take over. And they'll be hoping that they can lure Tony Brown back from the Springboks.
What's the possibility of that, Jeff?
Look, I would be surprised. Look, I don't know this for a fact, but I would be surprised if Tony hasn't left a door open, because I know actually he was offering to help with the Highlanders early part of this season, and South African rugby were happy for him to do that. It didn't quite work out for other reasons, but I think in the back of his mind that he's looked at this and gone, at some point he'd love to coach the All Blacks with Jamie Joseph. Now, this may have come a couple of years sooner than he thought. He may have been thinking post-Rugby World Cup the opportunity might come, whereas come now. So I'd be surprised if he hasn't got an out. I don't know that. I don't know, but I'd be surprised if he hasn't got an out. And then, to me, mind you, does he take that? Does he look at it? But this is a team. I know he loves coaching. I think he'd love to coach the All Blacks. But I think other guys. What's that?
I agree with Jeff. He that would be probably his ultimate ambition and goal would be to coach the All Blacks. But I would imagine that they've got him in concrete over there with the All Blacks coming, particularly this year. They would have locked him in. From all accounts, and having spoken to him, he's in a great environment and he loves what he's doing. It would take something really significant to move him on, and the All Blacks are significant. So there could be a possibility, Jeff, and possibly there is a door to be opened. I agree with you on the fact that, like off the back of what you said, Kirsty, that Jamie's the most likely candidate, having gone away with that All Blacks 15 in November. So it's kind of a stepping stone there. And by all accounts, that was a really harmonious trip, really enjoyed by the players. Very successful, obviously, on and off the field. So that's obviously been a massive positive for him, stepping into that role and fulfilling it with a really good results and a really good tour. So that kind of seems to be the stepping stone. And then obviously the other coaches that come into the mix up are coaches that we have outside of New Zealand. Clayton McMillan is one, Dave Rennie's another that's coached Australia before. That's having to bring people back into this environment and reset them. So I just think solidity, with only 2 years out to this World Cup, would have to be in a massive favour towards Jamie, because he's here and he's doing it now.
Can I just add one thing? I think that this, there was no doubt that Razor's regime and the way he was going to do things, and I'm interested once again in your guys' thoughts, was very, very different to the way people have coached the All Blacks in the past. The people that we're talking about getting involved again are going back to a traditional model, right? They're going back to very much a hands-on, have specific roles. Jamie will be very specific on what he does in terms of the team. They'll all have some sort of impact on the field, whether it's a Dave Rennie. I wouldn't be surprised. Here's the big thing for me is there is no head of high performance at New Zealand Rugby right now. I would be not surprised if they are ringing Joe Schmidt very quickly and going, what are you going to be doing post your relationship with Australia over the middle of the year? I think he finishes up.
Middle of the year, yeah.
Middle of the year. I think there's an opportunity to bring him back into New Zealand Rugby. I think this is almost a reset. You've got to think about what's going to change at New Zealand Rugby. They're going to have a new CEO. They're going to have a new head high performance. They've got a new board already. There's going to be a lot of change. And I think we're almost looking at it, and Jamie, as we know, and it's pretty easy to get a sense about who Jamie is as a coach and has grown over a long period of time. And actually, you think about what he sacrificed to get this opportunity. He could have easily kept going and made a lot of money in Japan. He's gone back, coached the Highlanders, as director of rugby. You're not getting a lot of money down there. But what you are is you're trying to get yourself back into New Zealand Rugby to get to know players and the environment. He's done that. So for me, I just sort of look at this and I think that they've gone down a direction and it hasn't worked. I think you'll be seeing a more traditional, and I get a sense we won't be confused ever about what Jamie Joseph means when he says something.
I don't like the word reset.
Because you're in Waihi Beach at the Flat White Cafe, where basically every head coach in New Zealand Rugby lives. So you must be hearing a few things down there.
I'll tell you what, I don't go down to those fancy places, Kirsty. I'm at home, mate. Don't get out. But I'm not keen on that reset. There's no way we're resetting right now. I think we're heading into a new direction. And that's come about by the board making a bold decision like they have, a real courageous one in my mind, because they're moving forward. Yeah, we've got no CEO, got no high performance, but the priority right now is put Jamie Joseph in there. He is the man to go. We shouldn't be stuffing around going, okay, let's open things up. I know they've got to go through a process. Jamie Joseph's your man. He's gone through all this. You spoke about it before, Jeff, about the world that we're in with the players getting, a lot more say, perhaps a lot more than what, the three of us would have had in the day. There's got to be a balance here. I don't quite like it's, sort of heading towards the players. I think there's got to be a balance here. Here's your man, Jamie Joseph. If there's ever a man that's gone through that, he went through that himself. Wellington, when he came in hard and went hard on his players, he had All Blacks that didn't like the way that things that sort of happened. He changed it. He's got experience. He went across to Japan, coached to Japan. So he's got that sort of experience. He'd come back. He didn't just get the coaching job, an All Black coaching job handed to him. He's worked his butt off to be able to get there. The biggest part to me is, you're talking about how surprised. I'd be very surprised if South Africa were that stupid to let Tony Brown go. Why would you let Tony Brown go? Man, there's no way. So I'm hoping that he has got a clause in there, because I'd say Jamie Joseph for me, Tony Brown if you can get him, but Dave Rennie. Here's another guy that's gone through all that experience of the Wallabies, a little bit of experience there, and sort of how he was sort of X in some sort of way. What he done with the Chiefs, I think he'd make a great assistant coach because of that international experience, but also, you said it, the old school kind of way. I think there still needs to be a balance between the guy that comes in, like a Jamie Joseph. He understands, he wants his hands on, not just from a motivational point of view, but from a technical point of view as well. He's going to get in and say, this is how you clean a ruck, and this is what I want to see. And then you've got a Dave Rennie. The things that he comes up with and the plays that he comes up with, and they've worked together in Irans and things like that. So I like that model. I don't think also, I'd love to see Brownie back. I don't think South Africa, that's silly to let him go. But there's your experience model. We can't afford to have 6 to 12 months coming up at the end of Super Rugby and go, oh, here's our coach. And, you know, where is that going to? They've got a camp this week. They've got guys, they want guys that are going into a Super Rugby campaign, knowing who the All Black coach is. And I suspect, you know, the legends in the game themselves that are on that board, the names that you mentioned, they will have someone in mind. And we've already shoulder tapped them right now, because this is massive news. This is historic news. This is news that, man, it's never happened before. An All Black coach departing ways, you know, mid-tenure, this is crazy. So there's got to be a backup plan behind that, rather than sort of thinking, let's dabble around and sort of see what the applications that we have in front of us.
All right, I'm just going to throw one more thing into the mix, because it's early in 2026. We've got a massive year ahead, the All Blacks, and an exciting year, like, honestly. So it's grenade lobbing time. Is this the other thing that we've got to consider, you know, when we're talking about coaches and we're talking about Scott Robertson, who incidentally I don't think is a bad coach. For some reason or another, he hasn't been able to get the synergy that he got when he was with the Crusaders, when he was with the under-20s, when he was with the Barbarians, were successful. So is there a little bit of rot in that change and shed, where there's a lot of experienced All Blacks within that team? Ian Foster didn't have a smooth run, and there was a lot of rocky road in there, coaches leaving, pretty much same group of players, experienced All Blacks I'm talking about. You know, is there a slight problem in there, the fact that if things get a little bit too hard and a little bit too difficult and the coach starts leaning on them, that they throw their toys out of the cot, you know? Like, the players, we as players, and we know this, at some stage have to take responsibility for what's happening on the field. You know, those things a coach can't control. When you kick the ball when you should have passed it, when you mandatory drop it for no reason and knock it on, when you make a poor decision, a coach can't do anything about that within the game.
Yeah, but I would say with that, though, when you're making errors, sometimes it's because you don't have 100% faith and trust in the game plan that you're going out there to play. And I think there's a lot of times some of these players are second-guessing themselves as they're going in. And in terms of that collaboration and understanding and responsibility and accountability is a word we use in sport all the time. I think you're 100% right, Justin, that there are some players that will also have to put up their hand and go, could I have been better and done better, and could I have led better? It's whether or not you can build and allow those players to lead better. But I think this is not just in terms of the players. You know, I look at probably over this last cycle the fact that, you know, a lot of these players probably aren't as prepared when they get to the highest level as they have been in the past. And for me, we've seen some players who are, you know, I suppose they've had a little bit of crisis and confidence at times, and that's hurt the All Blacks. Leadership is going to be absolutely critical. But I've got a sense that, like I say, this traditional model and building that trust and respect and that relationship and that understanding and the 100% commitment to what it takes to be an All Black and how to deliver that, because we need that blinding, I think, almost obsessive nature that for the next 2 years, it's about not just winning in South Africa, but it's about winning a Rugby World Cup in Australia. That's what it takes. And you've got to be all on the same song sheet. And we said it last year. It didn't seem as though the song sheet was the same. So when that first group gets together, when they put up their hand and say, this is how I could have been better, but this is hard for young men too. Remember, a lot of these guys are inexperienced. Imagine if you're 22, 23, 24, and this is happening around you, and you're seeing it get a little bit uncomfortable. It's not easy, as you say, Justin, to get it all right. I don't think Scott Robertson is a bad rugby coach. Sometimes things just don't work out for whatever reason. And this is one of those reasons that it hasn't quite, and this is not the first time this has happened in the All Blacks. Like, over time, this has happened every so often. It hasn't quite worked out at the right time. It's just they've had the courage and had the conviction. And this, you have to say, this is on David Kirk. He's had the conviction to say, I want change. And you're right, Mills. He'll have a plan. They would have already canvassed exactly who's going to be available, knowing that they will have to make some changes. And as a flow on, let's say, if it is Jamie Joseph, someone needs to take the reins at the Highlanders.
Yeah, well, that's what I was just going to ask you, Jeff, to wrap things up. If Jamie is to take over, what happens with the Highlanders? Because it means you've lost your head coach and your halfback, who is going to lead you to the title this year.
Yeah, we're a resilient bunch. It's fine. We're a resilient bunch down there. We'll find he won't disappear. Jamie won't disappear. But what I think the Highlanders will do is they'll recognise if he's the man, it's in the best interest of New Zealand rugby.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we'll just find someone else is what we do, isn't it?
Sacrifices
we're prepared to make in the game.
You can do
That's
it.
what we do.
You can do it.
It's a very real question, though. And I'll be scratching my head and going, if it is to be Jamie, I'm happy for him. I've got full confidence in him. These are troubling times. It's challenging. I have empathy for Scott Robertson. Their coaching staff, it'll be nervous times for them as well. But am I probably more confident now going into the season than I was literally hours ago? I probably am, because I've got something I believe I can trust and I can know and understand. I'll be very fascinated to see how the players react to this in terms of their form, in terms of their energy, and how they talk about what's happened over the last couple of years.
Okay, well, thank you so much for watching the Breakdown Breaking News special. We got Marshy out of the Speedos and off the lake. We got Mills from the lawnmower and Jeff from the golf course. We'll be back really soon on the Breakdown. Friday the 13th of February, Super Rugby all starts again. Guess who's the opening match? The Highlanders up against the Crusaders. It is going to be massive, so we'll see you in a few weeks' time.